Oh, look at me, I'm the Bone Wizard, and I think that Paladins are fantastic and amazing in every possible conceivable way! Oh, how I love their Paladin smite! Okay, so the LARP channel's a bust, but we can still talk about Paladins. So recently, there's been a bit of discussion here in the community as to whether or not Paladins make sense without getting their powers from gods. This discussion really comes off the back of Bone Wizard, who does make some pretty interesting points, honestly. But something I believe in, and that I've actually mentioned before, is that good writing or reframing something in D&D can usually explain away anything that shouldn't make sense.
This is Bone Wizard for the Paladin.
Oh, hey, shh. Look, man, you're coming in a bit too early. Also, you're only supposed to read that part for the auditions. We know who you are now, so... hey, look, it's Bone Wizard! What a surprise! Wow, pretty neat, cool! Yeah, dude, just go way back in the booth. The light will flash when you come on. So, allow me to explain why I think Paladins actually do make sense narratively, even if it's not what Wizards of the Coast wrote in their books. I don't think I need to say that not everything they put to page is a golden work of art that needs to be taken 100% as is. If it were, we wouldn't have a thriving community for homebrew content. Also, I won't be getting into every point Bone Man makes in this video, but I'll be getting to the biggest ones. Got it? Cool. So, the first point the Calcium Mage makes is that Paladins should be everywhere because their powers come from their commitment, or in D&D terms, their oaths. And yeah, that makes sense, right? If you're really committed to something, shouldn't that make you, like, an Oath of Devotion Paladin at least? Well, here's what I think.
No.
Being devoted to something because it's your job or just what lets you live in the world is not the same as true dedication to something. You could be a farmer who religiously plants, waters, and gardens at the same exact time every single day without fail, but more often than not, you're just doing that to feed yourself and your family. You're not doing it as a dedicated oath that you have to go out of your way to uphold. It's what you would have done anyway to stay alive. Alright, then what about people who are about to die? If your whole village is being raided by demons of the deep with no chance of survival, and your whole family is being massacred, why wouldn't you instantly become a paladin because of your sudden boost in willpower to stop the forces of evil that you're facing? Well, because that's not an oath. You don't just get to decide in a moment,
I am now beholden to this oath. Now, grant me my powers so I can slay these demons.
No, you're a person who is in mortal danger. That's what warlock packs are for.
But a bunch of people in the comments were like, but gods get their power from belief and prayer. I just have so much faith in myself that I grant myself powers like a god does. That is some Homelander type stuff. Get out of here.
Yeah, and that completely misses the mark for why paladins are supposed to be beholden to oaths. If you're ever trying to become devoted to something, say a diet, you know how long and hard the road to holding true to that devotion actually is. It takes months, if not years, to truly devote yourself to something. After all, why else would paladins have proficiency in heavy armor and martial weapons? It's because they've trained for years to get to where they are, just so they could finally reach that first level of being a paladin. So how does a paladin even get this magic? Well, if we're gonna use the weave as our example for the magic system here, let's look at how wizards get their magic. They study the arcane, learning the ins and outs of magic. They weren't born with the magic innately within themselves, they had to train. Quite similar to how a paladin has to train to get their magic. But if a wizard is actually studying the magic, where does the paladin fit in here? Well, maybe there's something intrinsic about a living being holding an oath and binding itself to that oath so tightly that the weave actually reacts to it. Perhaps the weave intertwines itself with that being on some level, which is how a paladin can use charisma, aka its force of personality, to cast magic. It becomes innate, like a sorcerer's magic, but on a lesser scale since it's just borrowing from the weave, not being born into it.
Hold on. So the weave has enough sentience to know if someone is upholding their oath or not, and know if they're doing something right or wrong, and then gives them powers.
Yeah, but I don't think right or wrong really holds any.
So you have a higher being granting assistance through giving magical powers if someone follows moral tenets.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty fair way of looking at it.
Bottle, you just reinvented God.
No. I reflavored God, and that means there's no gods involved.
You know what? I can respect that answer. At least it's honest.
Thank you. Now, I'm not really going to go off of what the D&D lore actually says here. I'm just going based off of somewhere where this can make sense in the way that it's written in the game. But you know what? If this is better, then maybe they can hire me over at WotC, and then fire me in 3 months when they realize they've overhired because they needed to direct funds over to D&D Beyond, because they see that as their cash cow instead of actually making good books with things in it that the players actually want. Like, I don't know, quality content, because that's actually what players want to have to begin with. Alright, Bone Man, take over for a second. Talk about the comments or something.
So to all the people who left very long, wordy, angry comments. People were able to pick apart some of the things I said in that video, like Bottle has here, but no one was able to argue the reinventing God thing, which was the main point of the video. At least Bottle is being honest and just saying, hey, I don't really like it, I'm just gonna make it a little bit different, which is totally fine.
Okay, sorry, I had to go get a drink of water. Alright, so let's talk about the farmer. Let's say you, as that farmer, have devoted yourself to tending to those crops every single day without fail, just for the love of the game. Great, you're a paladin now, so what are you gonna do with that lay on hands? Do you even know you have it? If you do, would you even think it's related to your crops, or would you just believe it's some kind of latent innate sorcery going on? Point is, there could be a ton of paladins that are just out there in the world not knowing that they're paladins. Another point Skeletal Witch makes is that people who get married are inherently holding oaths to each other, and same goes for doctors who take an oath not to harm. Should they not also be paladins? They're so clearly dedicated to their oaths. Alright, well, let's take this one example at a time. If you look at the average married couple, do they always look like they're so deeply in love, falling head over heels for each other at every glance they get at each other? No, the reality is that it's much more of like a passive love. They obviously love each other, but they're not actively going out of their way to make out or hug or have physical connection at every junction they get. Usually, they love each other passively, not aggressively. And as for doctors, they have to take an oath to not harm others. Well, that's not really a guarantee in D&D since Hippocrates didn't exist in its history, but let's pretend it's just all the same. The argument is that these doctors should become paladins, right? Well, who said they aren't? You do get lay on hands right at level 1, along with a literal spell called Cure Wounds if you choose it. The only thing these doctors are missing are weapons, which they don't need if their oath is to not harm. So in this scenario, maybe doctors are paladins, and maybe bad doctors are ones who have not stuck to their oaths, and just can't heal as well as others. And now, you've got a great story. Imagine your players find this out and end up in some shanty town in the middle of nowhere with a critically injured party member. They find the nearest doctor only after hearing about how the townsfolk will opt to travel 15 miles north to the next town over just for medical treatment. Maybe your party puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that this doctor must have broken an oath, perhaps by harming a patient, or maybe they don't put the pieces together. And now you get to show them all the fun medical practices of the medieval ages. And speaking of not sticking to an oath, what about oathbreakers? Kinda seems like if you're breaking an oath and still have magic, you gotta get that power from somewhere. Yeah, alright, yeah, that makes sense. But in the case of secular paladins, why would breaking an oath lead to losing your powers in favor of new ones? It just doesn't make sense. Well, why not take up the task of making it make sense? In my world, when a paladin exists, the magic of that world imbues itself so deeply within that individual that magic becomes secondhand nature to them. But when that magic is ripped away, something has to fill its place. And because there is a negative space in the magic of the world, that negative space turns into negative magic, making what was once divine into something corrupt, something unholy. And thus, an oathbreaker is born. See? With a bit of work, you can make things that don't make sense have meaning in your worlds. Now, as a dedication to Bone Wizard, how about we go back and look at those lovebirds? I mentioned the average couple, not the extremes, which by the way is an archetype I don't see often enough, but I love it. I love to see when a cute couple gets freaky on the battlefield. Whoa, not like that! I mean, I want to see a pair of paladins who hold such deep devotion to each other that they are inherently bound to each other and work as a team in battle. So why don't we make that?
This is Bone Wizard for the Paladin video.
What did I say about that? Alright, step out of the booth, let me get in there. No, I got this from here. Don't worry, I'll take care of this part. You can go sit on the couch out there. Man, unprofessional people, I don't get it. As an Oath of Passion Paladin, you share an oath with another individual who shares that oath with you, granting you each special abilities depending on what roles you take in the relationship. Your oath is nothing more than the byproduct of the love and passion you shared towards each other to begin with, now declared through an oath of companionship. These paladins have these following tenets. Number 1, do not betray the trust of your promise holder. Number 2, do not waver your devotion of your promise holder. And number 3, lift up your promise holder and celebrate their victories. Now, starting us off are your subclass spells, but you have a choice to make before you can access them. For you see, only half of the spells on the list are guaranteed. The other half are dependent on what role you choose, being a provider or a caregiver. No matter what role you go with here, you'll always get access to half of the spell list. The other half is locked behind what role you choose. So if you choose provider, you get access to spells that hinder your opponents, making it easier for others, including yourself, to attack them. If you're a caregiver, you get access to the spells that are more direct in helping you and your allies. But you might have noticed something if you're looking at the spell list right now. Out of all these spells, why Searing Smite? Seems a bit specific, right? Well, that's because the theme of this subclass is fire. I know, it's a classic, but why? Well, ever heard of a burning desire? How about setting your heart ablaze? Embers of love? You get the idea. But before we can get to all the damage, how do you get yourself a lover? Well, that comes in your first ability of level 3's Promise Right. The feature allows you to have what is essentially a wedding minus the actual wedding part. You know, unless you want to actually cast that spell that lets you have a wedding. When you become bonded with someone, they get to pick either the caregiver or provider role, just as you did. Nothing stopping you from both being the same role. Narrowing down relationships to just 2 roles was hard enough as it is, so I think this serves as some amount of flexibility. Though, I do think that you'd get more out of the subclass if you were to each play a different type, but that's just me. While you're within 15 feet of each other, you get access to abilities that are unique to this subclass, including my favorite addition here. You're both supposed to be paladins, so how does your caregiver cast paladin spells? Well, they do it with your spell slots, using the spells their role grants them access to. This does effectively half the amount of spell slots you have, which as a half caster is pretty brutal, but I think this can create some really awesome combo moments if you do it right. At level 7, you and your promise holder get to share each other's initiative, and you each get another ability depending on your role. Level 15 is when you get Burning Bond, probably the most flavorful ability. Once per long rest, while you're within 5 feet of your promise holder, you can take an action to grab its hand. Effectively, what this does is allow you and your promise holder to act together. You both attack as one and move at the same time. It's amazing. But that's not all. There are other bonuses like extra damage and extra healing. Finally, at level 20, you get your final ability, Blazing Devotion. As a bonus action, you activate this form, granting you 3 major benefits. One such benefit is the ability to have advantage on Constitution and Death saving throws. However, it's at a cost. If your promise holder died within the last week, you automatically fail 2 Death saving throws the next time you go down. And that's why this feature is called Inseparable. The last 2 benefits allow you to kiss your promise holder, allowing them to deal a bunch more fire damage, and to opportunity attack Searing Smite it if an enemy attacks them. I think this is all some pretty good stuff, and I really hope it helps to shed some light on how a secular paladin can work in your world of make-believe, even if constrained by its own made-up rules.
Hey, Bottle, I think you made some great points. I think these are really well thought out. I just got one question for you. Which one do you think is better?
Well, look, just because I have to rewrite some things in my world and how the magic system works and figure out how an Oath of Devotion paladin makes sense without gods and the fact that a paladin has the abilities of gods and everything about them is like divinely related and...
So paladins are better with gods?
Yeah, man, I guess so.
Paladins are better with gods, thank you! And this is why we need a Spellblade, so people can play a paladin-like class without all the baggage.
Yeah, that'd actually be pretty cool. Huh. You know, something has been bugging me since the beginning of this video. Wait a minute, how the f did you get it?